It shouldn't matter where you come from or what you do or what you wear. It's really about love. And that's what we were all challenging in that moment. And I loved how you truly embodied that.
Thank you. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that, right? Because I feel like it is very healing to see these moments happen, that we can coexist with our differences and accept each other and love each other and see the humanity in all of us. We get lost in translation and then we forget that we're all human beings with feelings and fears that want to be seen, right? And we're a reflection of each other as well. You know, often and still in some places are very much like very separate, right? Have that together and be like, hey, we can coexist in our beautiful chaos.
I mean, we talked a little bit about this on the set. Things came up for you, right? Like your relationship with religion and
starting with the email with the location, right? And I like look at everything. Yeah, right? I get the email with the location and I'm like, oh cool. And then I look it up on the Google Maps and I'm like, that's a church. And I was like, maybe it's like next to the church and it's not the actual church. And then I like go to the place and I'm like, no, we're actually gonna be in a church. A Catholic church to be specific, that was the religion that I was brought up with. And I do have a nun in my life. I don't know how to say that, mi tía abuela. Sí, mi tía abuela, my great aunt, is that what it is in English? Definitely brought a lot of like those memories, and I was thankfully able to see her recently and tell her about the show and tell her that my character was also raised by assassin nuns and she was scandalized by that. But it's good to have, you know, that, I guess, like relationship with her and her also acknowledging me and using my name, right? And seeing me at the same time as also being a nun for all of her life. She's in her 80s. Being in a church like that and them opening up the space for us to do something incredibly queer. Was really dope to see, right? But I also noticed like the times where I have my internalized moments where I'm like, can I twerk on this? Can I twerk in this space? Will that be okay? Is it all right if we move baby Jesus and like kick it with, you know, the homies? I mean, like am I allowed or not allowed to do, right? And realize that, you know, yes, queer people, we've always been there. We occupy all the spaces, and part of healing is, as everybody really, is knowing that we can love each other and sympathize with each other even if we have differences, right? And acknowledge the chaos of our contradictions with love and acceptance. There are 7 billion people in this world. That means 7 billion experiences in humanity. That means 7 billion opinions and ways of being. And I'm not saying the church is like cured from this photo shoot, right? There's still a lot of things that need to be assumed, responsibilities to assume, and things to realize, hey, we've done this, we've done that, and we want to change this, right? But I think this might be a way to like open up. Like
you talk a little bit about you started doing drag, right? And you talk about what does it mean to be masculine and feminine in drag. What have you come up with? What have you learned about those two constructs?
So I've been able to, through drag, bleed that energy into my life and really just like do whatever I want with however I want it and just be. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be non-binary to do that, right? You can express your gender however you want. I feel like it's also cool to see people like Bad Bunny, right? Who's a cis heterosexual man. We have not confirmed, not denied, who expresses his gender in a very societally feminine way, right? And I think that's so cool to see because it's not just for trans and non-binary people to do these things. It's open for everybody to really reclaim and take ownership of that and explore what that means to you outside of what society tells you can or cannot do. It's important to acknowledge that if it weren't because of trans women, trans men, non-binary people, gender non-conforming people being and existing, Bad Bunny wouldn't be able to, you know, do half of the stuff that he's doing. The work that the community has been doing for that to happen, right? I think it's awesome to see that this guy has a lot of people who follow him who are not part of the LGBT community, who are seeing a cisgender heterosexual man expressing his gender in a way that is not normally associated with masculinity. People to see that and be like, huh, okay, I can do that too.
why do you think it's so important to society's health, right? Because talks about overall social health, to challenge these constructs in that way.
The moment we are born, the first thing we're introduced to is fear. We're also introduced to love, but like they're parallel to each other, right? Say in this very binary societal construct, right? The second you're born, say you're born with a penis, right? You can't cry. You can't do that. You can't like that. That's pink. You can't like that. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. And then same thing goes if you're born with a vagina. You gotta be softer. You gotta be more sensible. Like, don't speak up, right? And all of a sudden you're scared of actually getting to know yourself. You're scared of taking ownership of who you are. And I'm not even including intersex people who are born with, a different type of genitalia, and then they're forced to fit into the binary with not consented surgical operations. We are constantly fed fear. You can't do this, you can't do that because of that, you can't do that because of that. And all of a sudden, as kids, we're like, I don't know what can or can I do without getting yelled at or getting scorned or getting bullied or getting this or that. And all of a sudden, from the very get-go, we are taught to perform so we are accepted. We're not taught to just like be and know that you are worthy of being accepted for exactly who you are. We're deconstructing the binary. What does it mean? What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a person, right? All these performative things that we do in order to be accepted. Let's strip all of that. Who you are. Who are you as a person? And then how do you genuinely want to express that without worrying what people will say? But I mean, 50 years ago, this would have been a very tough conversation to have. Even 10 years ago, even. So.
And in some parts of the world.
Oh, in some parts of the world, yeah, this would not be happening.
How do you approach your activism in relation to intersectionality? And in your own words, like, how do you define that for you in your activism?
Part of that too is like, as I get into more work and start producing, I want to see more intersections interact with mine, right? See how that feels, how that creates these nuanced stories, nuanced characters. Even if we're, say, remaking a movie, right, that's been done 1,000 times with the same cis-het white people, it's like, what if we change that casting, right? And not just the casting, but change the production, change the writing, change the crew that reflects these different types of intersections and gives a whole different meaning. In my activism is honoring these intersections and showing the world how these different intersections interact with each other. And again, going back to how like we're all different experiences and different realities and different versions and POVs of this world. It's so beautiful to see that, we can exist in these different intersections and sympathize and be compassionate and love each other and accept each other.
How do you draw your courage?
How do I draw my courage? I journal a lot. If I am doubtful, if I'm insecure, if I'm feeling XYZ, I write it down, I just let it all out there. And then I like look at it and I'm like, okay, that was a lot of fear. That was a lot of that, right? How do I now observe this feeling, allow it to happen, and treat myself with so much love in the process, whether it's making myself a tea or resting. Resting is revolutionary. That is something that I was not good at in the past. And really be conscientious of my heartbeat, my breath. Like, what is happening? Let me feel every single cell of my being, like nurturing my body and keeping this vessel alive. Also draw a lot of courage from celebrating my friends, celebrating who they are. It was really, really rough during the pandemic. I didn't realize how much I recharged my being at queer spaces. And all of a sudden that was taken away. And I was like, oh, where do I go? Where do I go to see my people? Where do I go to be in community? Because I know I'm being seen. And not only am I being seen, but I'm being celebrated. And I am celebrating with them. Now that we're back at it again, being able to hug my friends and celebrate them in anything they're doing. I see them and I'm like, fuck yes, we got each other. And I feel safe here and they feel safe with me. That and self-care. Courage comes from self-care, and which also, being in community is a form of self-care.
What can you tell people who are so scared and closeted, like what kind of word of advice do you have for them?
For people who just, that encouragement, You are living, you are breathing, you are existing in this world, and you're so valid and important. And the fact that you are here doing just that is just enough. You don't gotta do more. Regardless of whether you are or not able to present yourself as who you feel, who you are, into the everyday world or your school, your parents, your family, your friends, you are existing, you are living, you are breathing, therefore you are valid. Your existence is valid.
Want to take a shout out to Our Flag Means Death, because you did incredible in that show. And how much fun did you have with that? And tell me a little bit about the show and your journey with it, and you being casted as perfect for it.
It is a dream come true, honestly. So rad to be able to tell the story, right, with my body, with my soul, and reclaim a lot of queer stories that are often changed by history writers. It's fascinating to me to look back into any history, really, and see things like, oh, they were best friends for all of their life. And then you read the letters that they were sending each other, and I'm like, these were not best friends. They were super into each other, you know? And it's like, this was very gay and it was never mentioned, but it's like, but they were best friends, right? And then you see other things like, for example, in Mexico, in the Mexican Revolution, there were these women called las soldaderas who dressed like men to fight in the revolution. You know, there were a lot of women who dressed like men, fought the revolution is over, and then they let go of their men identity and like went back to being women and doing whatever the social expectation of that was, right? Amelio Robles, who began as a soldadera, and then in that very particular moment was like, wait a minute, there's something that's happening in me that's like tapping into something that I would have not otherwise been able to tap into. And he continued, he fought the revolution, he continued his life, he got married, all of the things. It wasn't until like 3 or 5 years before his death that the Mexican government recognized him as a soldier in the revolution, right? He lived and died as a trans guy, right? And it's never talked about. It's one of those like, we've always been here, we've always been in existing, right? But we're never talked about. And even with Jim, the two pirates whom they were inspired by are Mary Read and Anne Bonny, more so Mary Read, who also went by Mark. You start seeing that there's a lot of history with people who find themselves in very particular circumstances, that in that particular circumstance, it helps them find something about themselves that they otherwise would have not been able to do. So that's kind of what happens with Jim. They get one part of the revenge of killing one of the people that killed their family. And in that process, they present as what people associate with manhood, massive beard, shenanigans. And in that process, they find something about themselves that they otherwise would have not been able to do. And for me, was really important as I was interpreting Jim. They are not acting like a man and they're not acting like a woman. They just are the same person regardless. The only thing that changes is how people perceive them based on their expression. The beard does not make them more masculine. Not having the beard does not make them more feminine. They are the same human being. They act the same. I was very conscientious about like my body behavior, the things that I was choosing to do, the things that, whatever that I was doing with Jim, I was like, this is Jim's thing, regardless of how people perceive them, right? And had a lot of fun with that too. Being on set and being with the beard and having all of that. I'm very much a Fruit Loop, I'm very fruity, and having the beard and being perceived on set, especially when I was like walking outside and was not with the cast. And I was like walking outside and like getting maybe like a coffee at Crafty or something like that. The first month, several people, were expecting something. They were assuming and expecting something based on how I was looking like, right? And then I would get to the craft and be like, what do we want today? Something salty or something sweet? And they'll be like, what is happening? You are a bearded man with a high-pitched voice, and what is going on? And I was like, okay, there we go. I'm like also breaking. It's like, this can be, this is a thing, right? Yes, I could have this massive beard and also be a flamboyant, you know, sparkly fairy. So that was fun outside of like filming. Yeah, I mean, dream role. I was so thrilled to be doing this and have someone who speaks Spanish and have the scenes with Nana, you know, who's more upset about Jim not killing the Siete Gallos versus like Jim being like, I go by Jim these days. And I was like, got it, but did you kill everybody? Fuck. Get out of here. Do your thing. We didn't raise you right, you know? So yeah, that was cute.
Nana. Soy yo.
Bonifacia.
I go by Jim these days.
Well, come in, Jim. We'll have cake.
Nana.
Bet you think this is hilarious.
This is fucking fascinating. That's your nan. Jesus.
Coming, Nana.